Hi, everybody. Peter Greenberg here. Welcome to our global travel update for January 12th, 2023. Coming to you from New York today. About to go on an airplane, of course. But first and foremost, I hope you're doing well wherever you happen to be. What a crazy week. And we're going to talk about that. So let's get right into it. Of course, I'm ready to answer all your questions. You know the drill. Send them in. Comments, questions, whatever. We're also going to go back to the question I asked you earlier this week. Tell me your best inexpensive travel deal ever and why. We got some great responses, but most importantly, let's talk about what happened yesterday. Actually, what really happened Tuesday night, where the FAA. Let's repeat after me these two exciting words: floppy disk. The FAA is using antiquated equipment that's more than 30 years old. It's been going on for more than 30 years. 30 years ago, they were using equipment that was more than 30 years old. And I'm not just talking about air traffic control. I'm talking basic IT and communication, as in what's known as NOTAM. Now, to give you an idea of how old NOTAM is, the current acronym means Notice to Air Missions. But in the old days, it didn't say that. It was Notice to Airmen. Obviously, they've cleaned up their act. But it's an essential part of the flight process. Pilots cannot be dispatched and pushed back from the gate until they've read the NOTAMs. What's in a NOTAM? It alerts pilots to hazards, obstructions, construction, runway closures, at the airports they're flying to and on the route along the way. They need to see it. Everybody needs to do that. Every pilot does that. Well, Tuesday night, a corrupted disk at the FAA basically shut the system down. At that moment, the FAA folks were able to do the NOTAMs almost verbally because there was a smaller number of flights in the air. But by early yesterday morning, they knew they had a problem. And after 4 o'clock yesterday morning, they ordered a complete ground stop for the entire country. Those of us who remember 21 years ago, remember that was the last time we saw a complete ground stop. That was called 9/11. In that situation, it was clearly a terrorist activity. The United States was under attack. So the ground stop there didn't just involve no departing flights, it was no arriving flights. If a U.S. carrier was in the air, it was ordered to be on the ground immediately. And if an airline was flying to the United States from another country, it was diverted. Nothing was allowed to get into our airspace. And that's why so many planes ended up in places like Gander and Montreal. That was not the case yesterday. They quickly determined it was not terrorism or a cyber attack. It was a system failure. And so they shut down the system. It only shut down for about 3 or 4 hours. It started to be lifted around 9:30 yesterday morning Eastern time. We're still not back on track. If you go to FlightAware, you'll see there's still over 1,000 delays and cancellations. They will get back on track by the end of today. But the bigger question is, why did this happen and how did this happen? The FAA, underfunded and understaffed, that's one defense, but it's true. The FAA has been saying for years they want to install next-gen equipment, short for next generation. Here's the irony. They've been talking about next-gen for 2 generations. Would you believe that 10 years ago, as recently as 10 years ago, air traffic controllers were moving planes around with scraps of paper in the tower? That they were using vacuum tubes in their equipment that are not even manufactured anymore? In some cases, they had to buy them from Russia. Talk about old technology. We're still in the same situation in the year 2023. And the cost is huge, huge. And there's no reimbursement here. You know, it's one thing if Southwest Airlines, under their operational control, screws up. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But this is the government, and the government doesn't reimburse the last time I looked. So if you were stranded yesterday or you're delayed today, tough noogies for the moment. But here's the interesting thing. I think we'd all agree that Congress never agrees. They can't get anything done. You want to get them all together? You want to get them focused? Cancel their flights. And that's what's happening right now. Congress is laser focused for the moment on finding out what happened and making sure it doesn't happen again. But here's the other problem. Let's look at a best case scenario. Congress realizes the FAA didn't have the right equipment, the right training, they messed up. And they allocate bazillions of dollars to get state-of-the-art equipment. Under federal procurement processes, that's going to take a year of analysis and training and discussion and committee meetings. And then by the time they actually get the equipment and implement it, it could be 2 or 3 years from now, sometimes 6 or 7 years from now, And the true irony is by the time they implement and install that equipment, it is by definition outdated already. We have a problem, Houston, and we're going to have to solve it. It's a mess. And by the way, who does the FAA report to? The United States Department of Transportation. That's Pete Buttigieg, who is coming in hot on the Southwest incident, as he should. Because remember, under DOT rules, if it's determined that the problem was caused under the direct control of the airline, then the airline's liable to make it good. Even though there's no federal mandate to do it, public opinion here is overwhelming. And it's a clear-cut case that this was, I'm talking about Southwest, under the operational control or not control of the airline. Let's look at some numbers here. More than 1.5 million passengers were disenfranchised. More than 1 million were really affected. We're talking about accommodations, meals, clothing and toiletries, alternate forms of transportation. So if we do the numbers here and we estimate that the average reimbursement, and by the way, Southwest has publicly stated they're going to reimburse folks for reasonable expenses. Well, accommodations, meals, toiletries, clothing, and transportation comes under that category. Assuming that average is about $400 a passenger, Southwest is going to be writing about $400 million worth of reimbursement checks, but we're just getting started. Then there comes the revenue they lost over that 8-day period that they can never recoup, but that shows up in their books as a loss. And we're not done yet. I wouldn't bet my career, but I'd bet a lot of money that the US DOT is going to come in with a huge enforcement action and a very hefty, quote unquote, proposed fine against Southwest. So by Southwest's own estimates, not mine, they're on the hook for about $825 million. So stay tuned on that one. But as far as the FAA is concerned, stick around. We have to see what happens here. Could it happen again? You bet. So there are short-term lessons and long-term lessons. We will talk about that in the days and weeks to come. Just one housekeeping note about today and this week has an important, significant anniversary. Where were you on January 15th? That's coming up in a couple of days, right? Where were you on January 15th, 2009? I know where I was. Do you know where you were? Something happened that day, and it happened right here in New York. I was actually on a U.S. air flight flying from Washington, D.C. to LaGuardia. And as we came in to do our final approach, the captain came on the PA and said, folks, we have an incident at the airport. We're not going to be able to land. We'll have to circle. And I said to my flying companion, not knowing anything, I conjectured there's got to be a plane in the water. Well, I was technically correct. There was a plane in the water, but not that water. A little bit further west than there, it was in the Hudson. You know the story. U.S. Air Flight 1549, the Miracle on the Hudson, Captain Sully Sullenberger, January 15th, 2009. We have the 14th anniversary. And just today, the Aviation Museum in Charlotte, where, by the way, that aircraft is permanently housed. We remember that plane, the Airbus 320. They announced a new name for that museum, the Sullenberger Aviation Museum, in honor of Captain Sullenberger. For those of you who listen to our radio show, Eye on Travel, every week on Saturday, I have an extended conversation coming up with the captain this Saturday on everything from the FAA to Southwest Airlines to aviation safety in general, and of course, the lessons learned from his unbelievable experience on the Hudson. So be sure to listen in. If you can't find a station in your market, just go right to our website, petergreenberg.com, hit the radio icon. We start streaming live at 10:05 Eastern time. And of course, you can always get the podcast about a day or two later. So I hope you'll do that. So now we've talked about the FAA. We've talked about Southwest. Let's talk about stupidity in travel. Remember we had the animals packed in the cat in the bag? Remember that? Well, we have a new one. They found it in Tampa. Let's show the picture. That's right. The TSA found the boa constrictor in carry-on bags. There we go. Snakes on a plane. Had to happen. Luckily, the TSA saw it and dealt with it. That's the first one. But now let's move over to Dallas for another exercise in great passenger stupidity. You know, I've always said there are two kinds of airline bags, carry-on and lost. I never thought someone would actually try to check in this. Look at the baggage claim deed at American Airlines in Dallas, and look what comes around the baggage conveyor belt. All right, that's our humor for the day. We'll come back to that a little bit later. Let's go back to saying hello to some people here. Let me scroll up here, and we'll get started. All right. Hello from Harriet and Jim from a rainy and snowy mix in Boston. By the way, I'll be in Boston a week from this Saturday speaking at the Travel and Adventure Show at the Heinz Convention Center. And I'll be in Chicago this weekend speaking on Saturday in Rosemont at the Travel and Adventure Show. So if you're watching me right now in Chicago, please come by and say hello. Boston next week, we'd love to see you. Patrick's saying hello from Palm Springs. Zora's got back from Antarctica. She had a great experience. You got it. I bet you had good weather, better weather than we had when we were down there. Okay, Debbie's saying hi from Buffalo. Go Bills. You had to like, it was storybook, wasn't it? Returning the opening kick for a touchdown. You just want this to end the right way. So go Bills. I'm right there with you. Jack and Diana are in Avon, Indiana. Susan, Bellingham, Washington. Evelyn's in Denver. Katrina is, as she always is, in Alabama. April's saying from sunny Las Vegas and southern Colorado. Hello, Nancy. Lansing, Michigan. I'm upset with you, Lorena, because your Spartans beat our Wisconsin men's basketball team in Madison. So I'm not talking to you. Of course I'm talking to you. All right. Route 66. Hello, Terry. Frederick's saying hi from Dar es Salaam. Our friends in Tanzania are weighing in. Okay. Question from Harriet and Jim. Should we worry about safety given what happened with traffic control in the FAA? Do you think the FAA will get the funding to update their antiquated system? Yes, I think they will get the funding. The question is, how fast can they move? You know, we've just celebrated the 30 safest years in commercial passenger aviation since aviation began, right? There have only been 2 fatal crashes. It was the American flight in November of 2001 near Rockaway, right here in New York, the Airbus headed for the Dominican Republic, and then Colgan Air Flight in February of 2009. By the way, right after Sully's flight near Buffalo. That was it. Now, remember, there are 45,000 planes in the sky today. And nothing happened. And nothing happened yesterday. And I hope nothing happens any day. But those are unbelievably and overwhelmingly positive odds. So does the FAA need to get their act together? You bet, on so many levels. So we can't just depend on luck anymore. We've got to be able to in a direct and proactive way, maintain that record. All right. Patty's saying hi from rainy Kentucky. Camilla's in Tucson. Jenks, Oklahoma. Okay, George. All right. Hello from Minnesota. Yeah, it is a great tribute to Sully. Listen, tune in and hear what he has to say, because he's never at a loss for words, and he speaks literally from experience. Victor's saying hi from Tanzania as well. Colleen says Captain Sullenberger is awesome. A great pilot, great man, inspiration. Looking forward to that interview. Okay. I worked with Sully for a long time. As you may remember, after Flight 1549, he came to work with us at CBS News, and he and I did a number of stories together, and I'm looking forward to that conversation this weekend. Evelyn wants to know, when will I be in Denver? I will be in Denver on the 24th, 25th, and 26th of February. So I hope you'll get a chance to come see me at the convention center. I'll be speaking there at the Travel and Adventure Show. Okay. Gloomy Chicago. Ooh, that doesn't sound good. Chow from Tampa. No snakes in any of my bags. That was from Barbara. Barbara saying, what are your top seas in Paris? I have so many. And I'm not saying that just to be glib. Remember what Audrey Hepburn said, Paris is always a good idea. There are so many different museums in the Louvre to see. And you can start with the Musée d'Orsay and then go from there. I have not found really any bad restaurants in Paris. The dollar against the euro makes your life a little bit easier eating out. I love walking along the river. Remember, one of my guests on the show was Elaine Sciolino from the New York Times, who wrote the entire history of the Seine. and she did. It's an amazing book. It's not just the Seine over by Notre Dame or the Bateau Mouche. That Seine is a long river. Check it out. There's so much to do. Okay, Elizabeth is in to Delray, and it's sunny. Yes, Patrick Cooney reminds me of a story that I covered the 13th of January. That's tomorrow. Back when? 81. Air Florida Flight 90 in Washington. The 737 that hit the bridge, and the hero that jumped in the water, remember him? He was celebrated by President Reagan in his State of the Union address. But that's a crash that never should have happened. It was icing on the wings. They never did the proper de-icing. And what's worse, I know that story very well. The pilots weren't properly trained, and they were told by their airline not to redline the engines, only go out a certain number of cycles. And as they got down that runway and realized they didn't have enough lift, nobody thought to push the throttles all the way forward. They would have cleared the bridge, and they didn't. Terrible story. And yet that happened the 13th of January, 1981. Yikes. Okay. Phyllis wants to know, can we get credit for our over 6-hour delay yesterday? Not to my knowledge. Jews in Japan, hello, Jew. Miranda was swimming in from California. I know. I was in Los Angeles earlier this week. It was a mess. Macon says Ethiopian Airlines starts service from Atlanta this summer. Ethiopian Airlines is an interesting airline because they do a lot of Fifth Freedom Light flights, right? Ethiopian Airlines used to have a flight from LA, right? That stopped where? Anybody want to guess? On its way to Addis Ababa. Same thing's going to happen with Ethiopian Airlines from Atlanta this year. And by the way, they're a very good airline. Okay, Baraka saying hi from Tanzania. Robin's in Williamsburg. Macon saying see you in Chicago. I will see you there, Macon. Yeah, the Denver Travel Adventure Show, February 25th and 26th. We're putting these notes in here. Rainy, Pennsylvania says Gail. Another one's, oh God, Victor in Kazera in Tanzania. Everybody's watching today. Okay. Okay. Oh, Mary Bliss says, don't forget all the ferries and water taxis that got the passengers off the plane's wing. Well, I covered that story for NBC. I'm not going to gloat here, but I won the Emmy for it. And it was one of the more remarkable, well-timed rescues I've ever seen. Does anybody want to guess? From the moment that plane came to a stop in the Hudson, which was moving, by the way, right? The tide was going out. Most of the passengers were on the wings. A couple actually were in the water. How long from the time of the plane hitting to the time that the last passenger was rescued and brought to shore? This is remarkable. 24 minutes. 24 minutes. It seemed like an eternity to the people on that plane, but in fire and rescue terminology, a miracle. An absolute miracle. That plane landed in the most perfect position right by the Circle Line ferry and the World Cruise ships right on the Hudson, right there on the west side of Manhattan. They saw that plane come in. They already undid the ropes and were headed towards them. They knew they had a problem because no plane ever flew that low over the Hudson. And the first of those boats reached the plane. This is amazing. 3.5 minutes. I hope it never happens again, but they'll never be able to beat that record. Unbelievable. So yes, kudos to all those ferry captains and all the mates. And of course, the fire department rescue teams that came in. And it's just amazing they were able to do what they did in such a short amount of time in such adverse weather. It was so cold that day that I was in a broadcast truck where the plane ended up down by the Battery. It was lashed to the dock. And it was so cold I could only leave the truck for 30 seconds, long enough to do my stand-up. Otherwise, my mouth would freeze. Imagine now you're in the water. Yikes. Michael saying hello from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Okay. Okay. Gail saying, still waiting to hear from the cruise company about my missed cruise due Southwest Airlines. I'm not optimistic. Well, Gail, I'm not optimistic either unless you bought your air travel from the cruise line. If you bought your air travel separately, the airline is only responsible to get you to the destination you were flying to. And if you had to buy clothing for that, or food, or accommodations, that's part of the payout from Southwest. They're not responsible for covering your cruise. That's what you understand about the contract of carriage from the airline. So I just want to be very clear about that. Brenda say hello from Stoughton, Wisconsin. We love Stoughton. We love Mount Horeb. And I hope they reopen Schuster's, the original great coffee shop there. It's currently closed. I want them to reopen. How is Aer Lingus to travel to Italy? I fly them all the time, and I love the idea that you change planes in Dublin. That means you clear U.S. customs there too. How about it? How cool is that? Okay, Judy says, what do I think of Condor Airlines flying from Phoenix to Frankfurt? How economy budget is it? Is it uncomfortable? Well, let's put it this way. You're not going to be stretched out over 3 rows eating bratwurst. No, but you know what? They provide a very good service. They're very efficient. And you know what? Bring a good book. Bring your Darth Vader headphones and zone out. Oh, by the way, there was a documentary on the rescue. Ozzy wants to see a documentary on those ferry captains and crews. There is one. Okay. Pittsburgh says they're building a new airport, Ozzy says. Okay, jury's out on that. We'll talk about that later. All right, let me scroll back up here. And before we get to any more questions, I want to get to what you guys answered for me this week, which was, what was your best, greatest, inexpensive travel deal? Okay. Now, by the way, I go back long enough to remember going to San Francisco with an $8 ticket on PSA. Anybody remember that? Okay. Anthony says, it wasn't my greatest travel moment, but the best one based on value to cost. It was a direct round trip from Orlando to San Diego for $28. And the joke about that is the taxes for that $28 were probably $25. Okay. Let's see. Mike says points and miles, Singapore to Vietnam. Is that what he's saying? All right. Donna says staycations are the best. Come on, Donna. All right. Here's one. January 1999 round trip to Paris for $238 on American Airlines. The price included taxes and fees. Tickets went on sale on Tuesday, and I had to leave on Thursday or Friday and come back Monday or Tuesday. By the way, speaking of pop-up fare sales, there are 2 in the market right now. They're going to expire in about 3 days, but you should jump on them. TAP Air Portugal, unbelievably low fares to Europe. And we just mentioned Aer Lingus before. Aer Lingus has a great airfare sale now to Europe. Now's the time to do it. Within the next 3 days, that deal is gone. So check it out. All right. I'm looking for some of the crazier deals. British Airways Black Friday deal on Twitter 6 years ago, $1,100 total for round trip airfare for a trip to London. Not bad. 3 nights hotel and 2 Oyster cards. God, they were paying you to fly. Wow. Not bad. Boy, so many people have great ones. I'm gonna you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna ask my team to print some of these out. I mean, actually post them on Facebook so you can see them. This is cool stuff. All right, Monica, please. $40 business class to China. Oh, and then with taxes, here come the taxes, under $400 round trip. Wow. Barbara said in the early 80s, $99 round trip San Francisco to JFK. I have news for you. During the pandemic, my round trip was $93 on American from LAX to JFK. I could have gone bowling on the plane. I think I did go bowling on the plane. Okay. Tons of stuff here. We love it. All right. Wow. Someone here got a great deal on Use Air West. Does everybody remember the yellow banana? $39 from Phoenix to Vegas round trip. Okay. Flying with my pops years ago on Pan Am. This is from Ozzy. We were upgraded to first class by the very nice lady at the counter. Unbelievable experience. Yep. You remember Pan Am's motto? You can't beat the experience. Pan Am. Okay, that's the song for today. That's all you get. All right. $100 round trip from Atlantic City Airport to Las Vegas on Spirit. Well, yeah. I'm not so sure Spirit still flies to Atlantic City. Can somebody tell me if they do? I've flown to Atlantic City on Spirit. You know what? It was fine. Okay. Tons of stuff here. We'll run out of time before we do it. But I mean, great stuff. How about this? Round trip Tulsa to London via Dallas on Braniff. Now you're dating yourself since Braniff went out of business in 1982 for $100 a person. And now we know why they ran out of business. You can't charge $100. Okay. But if you can get it, you jump on it, right? Wow. Some really good stuff. Now, we got Paul over here who's being a smartass, the Staten Island ferry. But he's right. It's still the best deal in town in New York. You know it. And by the way, for those people who tell you they've been to Staten Island because they took the ferry and then stayed and came back, they're liars. They have not been to Staten Island. They've been on the ferry that stopped. See Staten Island. It's New York's forgotten borough. It's got so many cool things. We actually broadcast our radio show from there last year. Very cool stuff. Okay. Wow. $300 round trip Miami to Shannon. Tanya, nicely done. Okay. All righty. So now let's go to the photo of the week. This one might surprise you. Anybody want to guess where this is taken? The answer is not Cappadocia. It might surprise you. This was not Turkey. This was not Albuquerque, New Mexico. Both places known for their balloons. Ready? Anybody want to guess? Try this. Egypt, the Valley of the Kings at dawn. Nicely done, Marley McCormick. You got up early for this one, but it's worth it. You know, the best photos are when you get to wait for the light, and Marley did it. She and her husband Jeff finally got to take their long-anticipated trip to Egypt on the Nile River cruise in late September, even though we battled unseasonably warm temps of 108 degrees. It was obviously worth the 2.5-year wait, the trip of a lifetime, and Viking, the river cruise guys, did not disappoint. Ballooning over the Valley of the Kings. Nicely done, Marley. If you think you've got a photo of the week that qualifies, this one certainly does, send it in to us. And if we like it, it goes right up there with Marley's. Marley, thank you so much for that. Let's scroll down and see some more questions here. By the way, if you're watching me now and you were one of those passengers stranded on Southwest, please email me, peter@petergreenberg.com, and let me know what they gave you in terms of reimbursement. Did they just offer you 20,000 bonus miles? That's the biggest insult of all. Most people don't realize that most people who fly Southwest Airlines only fly the airline twice a year, and they're usually flying it during a holiday period. So if you're giving them bonus miles, and they want to redeem it during a holiday period, which is the only time they fly, it's a loss leader. It's never going to happen. In a situation like this, you don't take the miles. You take the cash. Keep receipts, get a paper trail, remember the first, last names and title of everybody you ever talked to, and submit a bona fide claim. The bonus miles ain't no bonus. All right, let's scroll down here. Sorry about that, everybody. I'm going all the way down. Okay. Joan was in Albuquerque. She saw balloons, probably just like that. Gadiel is in Tanzania. Adrian says, in 1970, I flew one of those unnamed consolidators round trip Baltimore to London for $249, returned 3 months later. Nicely done. Okay. What do we have here? Oh, people are guessing the Napa Valley. No, it wasn't Napa Valley. You know, it's Valley of the Kings. It wasn't New Mexico. It wasn't Encinitas. Robin, being smart with me. Germany to Hawaii was their best inexpensive travel deal. Free, courtesy of the military. You were on a MAC flight, or as they call it now, the Mobility Air Command, as opposed to the Military Air Command. Okay. All right. Listen to this one from Camilla. In 2004, I flew AA twice from Florida to New York and earned a free ticket to any destination on their route network. That's any. So we chose Japan and visited Tokyo, all these other cities in Japan, then stayed in another city, then flew to Hokkaido, rented another car, drove all the way up to the Sea of Okhotsk. Oh, my goodness. That was a 12-day trip, nonstop flight, JFK to Tokyo. P.S. To make it as close to free as possible, I scoured the fare rules and got the rock bottom deal. Yep, you did. You did. Oh, a triangle fare on National Airlines. How many people remember National? They were absorbed by Pan Am, a purchase Pan Am never should have made back in 1980, I believe. Okay. Let's see here. Our absolute best deal from Gail was a nonstop from Philadelphia to London on BA for $99 round trip way back in 2002. You're not going to find that kind of a deal anymore. I think you're right, but you do remember it. All right, we're looking here. Okay, Sean says, I'm traveling with my family tomorrow on Frontier Airlines to Philadelphia. Any recommendations for dinner in Philly? I do. I don't know if they're open for dinner, but they're definitely open for lunch. It's called the Oyster Bar. Very simple. I've never had better, fresher oysters than at the Oyster Bar in Philadelphia. Well worth the trip. Okay. Mary wants to know, is it okay to leave tips in Jerusalem, Egypt, Amman, Petra, and US dollars, or should I get local currency? I'm going to tell you what I do. In fact, I've got one right here. I didn't know you were going to ask the question, but I keep them handy. I travel with 100 of these. The $2 bill. It is legal tender. It's a conversation starter, and people know you care, and they remember you. Use the $2 bill. People love getting tipped in US dollars, especially now with the dollar so strong against other currencies. Okay. Okay, Ellen wants to know what's the best time to buy airfare to London for the end of June. Well, since you mentioned the end of June, you might want to look at it now. Because as of June 15th, those prices go up. Those airline algorithms are already programmed for that. Okay, so get going. Okay, now I have one more thing to share with you, and it's worth it. First of all, don't forget this Saturday, Ion Travel, starting at 10 a.m. Eastern. My extended conversation with Captain Sully Sullenberger on the anniversary of the miracle landing on the Hudson of U.S. Air Flight 1549. Someone sent me this picture the other day. It says it so reminded me of what I tell my own staff, of what I tell my own friends, and what I hope you will embrace as well. This was a sign I think it was in a restaurant. Post the sign. We do not have Wi-Fi. Talk to each other. Pretend it's 1995. Absolutely. Now that, by the way, applies to everybody except the FAA, because the FAA is still stuck in 1995. But for everybody else, nothing beats the power, the romance, the effectiveness of a simple conversation. That's how you establish common ground. That's how you learn. That's how you establish lifelong relationships and friendships, or even better, lifelong partners. I encourage you. The best thing that, you know what, I'm reminded, this is way before Wi-Fi, but I'm reminded of the big power failure in New York in 1965 when all of Manhattan went down. And it went down for about 20 hours. I remember because I was living up on the 13th floor of our apartment building with my parents, and we had to climb all those stairs every time. But an interesting thing happened 9 months later. The birth rate went up in New York, skyrocketed, because people had no choice but to be together, talk to each other, learn new things, and maybe even get closer. So I love that sign. I'm going to try to post it in my office, although I do have Wi-Fi, so it sort of defeats the purpose. But you get the message, and you get the point. I just wanted to share that with you. One other housekeeping note, February 22nd, so it's coming up a little bit more than a month, is the premiere of our new show, Hidden Saudi Arabia. Remember, we're talking about a kingdom that was closed to the outside world for 79 years. It's still pretty much a new experience for everybody. And so we went out there and discovered some amazing things, which we'll share with you. It starts February 22nd. Our premiere station is WTTW in Chicago, but check your local listings. And of course, it's also available on Amazon Prime and Apple TV+. So everybody have a great weekend. Please be safe. I hope I'll see you guys in Chicago this Saturday or in Boston next Saturday and Sunday. Please listen to the show this weekend. Very good conversation and one worth listening to from Captain Sully Sullenberger. And I will see you very soon. Anthony, thank you for handling all the engineering today. And everybody be safe. See you guys.